Compost has become the gold standard of soil improvement. But here's the uncomfortable truth most gardeners never hear. Compost is, well, slow. It builds soil eventually, but ancient farmers feeding entire civilizations could not wait years for fertility to show up. They needed soil that responded within weeks, not seasons. Long before modern compost bins and turning schedules, they used a soil-building method that worked dramatically faster, required fewer inputs, and created deeper fertility that compost alone still struggles to match. Ancient farmers were not patient because they were slow, but because they were precise. The idea that ancient agriculture was primitive is simply wrong. These farmers observed soil behavior closely and learned how to accelerate biological processes without destroying them. They understood that soil fertility is not about adding material. It is about activating life. Compost adds organic matter, but ancient farmers went further. They pre-digested fertility before it ever touched the ground. The lost method relied on fermentation rather than decomposition. While compost depends on slow aerobic decay, ancient soil builders used controlled fermentation. Plant residues, manures, weeds and food scraps were broken down in low oxygen conditions using moisture, time and naturally occurring microbes. This process converted raw material into immediately available nutrients while preserving carbon and microbial energy. Instead of waiting months for compost to mature, fermented soil inputs began feeding plants and microbes as soon as they were applied. Fermentation breaks down complex organic compounds into simpler forms without burning them off as heat. Nutrients stay soluble. Carbon stays intact. Microbes remain alive. Compost piles often lose nitrogen and microbial diversity through overheating. Fermented inputs avoid this loss entirely. Ancient farmers didn't know the chemistry, but they recognized the result. Crops responded quickly, soil softened faster, and fertility lasted longer. Historical evidence shows this method across multiple civilizations. From East Asian farming records to Roman agricultural texts and indigenous soil practices in South America, fermented soil inputs appear again and again. Liquefied manures, plant ferments, and carbon-rich residues were applied directly to fields. These methods produced fertile soils rapidly and sustainably. Some of the most productive soils on Earth were built this way, long before compost became fashionable. Organic material was submerged in water mixed with ash, soil, or aged manure and sealed loosely to ferment rather than rot. The process took days or weeks instead of months. Once the mixture developed a sour, earthy smell rather than a putrid one, it was diluted and applied to soil surfaces. This fed microbes first, plants second. The soil responded almost immediately. Fermentation? Well, it just doesn't have the tidy image of compost piles, does it? It smells stronger, looks a bit messy, and honestly, it requires observation instead of instruction labels. Modern gardening culture, tends to favour packaged solutions and those slow amendments. The ancient method, you see, demands attention and restraint, which is, in fact, why it quietly disappeared, despite its effectiveness. So, to begin, start with plant material that would normally go into compost. Chop it small. Then place it in a container with water and a small amount of finished compost, garden soil or aged manure to introduce microbes. Make sure to keep it submerged. Cover loosely, just to allow gases to escape. And don't forget, stir occasionally. After 1 to 3 weeks, you'll want to dilute the liquid until it resembles weak tea, and then apply it to the soil, not the leaves. The remaining solids can be buried shallowly or mulched over beds. This feeds soil organisms immediately while continuing to build structure. Used repeatedly, this method improves soil texture faster than compost alone, especially in poor or compacted soils. Clay soils loosen without tilling. Sandy soils, well, they hold moisture longer. Plants show deeper green growth within just a few weeks. Microbial activity increases rapidly. Garden beds recover faster after heavy harvesting. This is not theory. It is visible soil response driven by biology, not volume. Fermentation preserves carbon. Compost often loses it. Carbon is, the backbone of long-term fertility. Ancient farmers instinctively protected it. That is why their soils improved instead of degrading over time. This method feeds microbes without exhausting them, creating resilience instead of dependency. Compost still matters, but it works best as a structural foundation. Fermented inputs act as accelerators. Together they replicate ancient soil systems where fast fertility and long-term stability worked side by side. Compost builds the house, fermentation lights the fire. What ancient farmers understood that modern soil advice often ignores. They understood that soil is alive and hungry. Feeding it slowly is not always enough. Sometimes soil needs activation, not accumulation. Fermentation provided that spark, turning waste into energy instead of waiting for decay. If this kind of grounded, field-tested agricultural knowledge matters to you, subscribe to Farm Logic. Share this with growers who want faster results without sacrificing soil health. These methods built fertile land long before modern inputs existed, and they still work today.